Okay, let's look at a couple of anomalies and we'll make a connection between the two and show something that might just change history if people would look into it. They've known this for a while, but the reason they won't look into it is because it changes history on both sides of the plain. If we're looking here, this is some strange circle formations that they have found, and it's just in clusters. And there's been ones found that are just solo sitting out by themselves, and others are like this one in a set of ringlets that carry themselves on, some smaller leading to bigger ones, and some of the bigger ones even have a circle around a circle, a concept. There's some of these areas that show that they have a squared off appearance to them, like in here. But generally, most of these look like this circular formations that we see across here. Again, some smaller ones which end up just being almost a paw print or cluster that looks like that. If we just found a few of these in archaeology, it would be interesting to try to figure out where it all came from. They talk about these things kind of like they're the glyphs, like in the Nazca lines, and they really don't have very much connections to them. The only glyph type thing that I see in this whole photograph is right here. It looks almost like a microphone or maybe a penis that's sitting there etched out onto the ground. It's dark in that area, and so where it's been etched, it shows up lighter. This is a place known as the Black Desert. Yeah, it's inland quite a bit from what we call Israel today. But if this was just the only place that it was found, it would be remarkable. Well, yet, no, it's not. Though they were found back in the 1920s by a mail carrier flying an airplane over the top of them and looked down and going, what are these? And mentioning them, there's been very little archaeological research done on these. They finally did some on a few, though, and quite interesting aspects have been shown. People wonder why the second part that I'm going to show you later hasn't been investigated, and it's probably because of the reality of the situation. Let's get into this here real quick. This is looking at some giant geoglyphs in Jordan are older than the world-famous Nazca lines. Despite the difficulty in discerning the finished product of these giant designs from Earth, archaeologists have recently announced that at least some of the great works of old men, as told by the Bedouins, and that's what they called them back in 1927 whenever they were asked about it, of the Middle East are significantly older than the most famous Nazca lines of Peru. They've also shown that one cluster of the wheels may be linked to astronomical knowledge in the past, and that some of the geoglyphs were likely related to burials, but the purpose of many of these designs seems to remain uncertain. Archaeologists have come to the conclusion that at least two of the giant wheels from Wadi al-Katafi, or Katafi, and the Wisad pools in the Black Desert of Jordan are at least 8,500 years old, or 6,500 BC. That age of time of mankind is quite important, and if you've been with my channel for a while, you'll find that number keeps coming up over and over again, along with a few other key dates. So it makes them older than the famous Nazca lines in Peru by about 6,000 years. So it's not really a comparison as much, but it's just a lead-in, right? Life Science reports that using optically stimulated luminescence, a new method debated by Caucasian scientists, or OSL, the archaeologists were able to show that not only the date of creation of the two wheels, but also that one of them was also repaired again about 5,500 years ago. Now we're going to look down. Oh, it's going to lock up on me. Seriously. Here's a secondary picture. These are the two wheels that they found of the Black Desert that they actually went out to and did archaeology there, and in finding charcoal and things that were associated with it, not even doing a full dig. They found that they were created at 8,500 years ago, and really it just seems like this whole area was somewhat covered with these swirls that we see in circles at about this time. They haven't dug them all up to see if they correspond over a wave of time or how much that time actually exists of, whether they did it for 400 years, 1,200 years, or the full extent of it. They would have to excavate quite a few of these, get carbon dates off of them, and then find the earliest and the latest dating, and then come up with the idea that they were making these things in this area over a period of 1,200 years or whatever it came out to. Interestingly, these are found, and there's hundreds, thousands actually, of these things that all just add up. All the way from ancient Anatolian Syria, across the Black Desert, leading all the way into Yemen, deep into the Persian Gulf area. And last year I did a video about one that was there that was real square. I talked about ones like this that were around there on how they led out. And before I had done one on this, but we're making another connection today. You can see the walls and things in here, and they talk about archaeoastronomical connections. And though this is little circles and things that you would think of, something like Göbekli Tepe, they don't have T-pillars and other alignments. Some of these burial type ones seem to have shown some alignments, at least towards summer solstices and things like that. And that kind of leads you to believe that these people had something going on already with the seasons and understanding agriculture and so on. They've put two and two together and said that these are created by these Natufian people that we knew about. There's been a lot of archaeological digs that are connected to these ancient Natufian people, and it looks like they would use them for hunting purposes in some way, because some of the ones attached to this do look almost like the Nazca lines, where it's a big pointy pyramid shape leading into something like this. And the idea is that they probably chased and corralled animals and into that area, and then that was basically a killing spot where they would run them into, and people were already waiting there with a large amount of bow and arrows and so on, and they would take them down from there. The research soon to be published in the Journal of Antiquity demonstrates that the time of creation of these two wheels, the climate of the Black Desert, would have been very different, making life in the area much easier. And archaeological evidence for their claim came in the form of charcoal from the deciduous oak and tamarisk, which is a shrub, that were recovered from two hearths in one building dated about 6500 BC. Again, there's that same dating. So at this time, this place wasn't arid and almost dried out. We've talked about this in a lot of other videos, for there was a deciduous forest all over this area. The ancient Sumerians talked about the big cedar forest and how it had receded away, and they had to get them from up north. The Egyptians lost all of their trees and used them up, and in effect had to import them in from Lebanon, and the Lebanon cedars, and it's talked about in the Bible in all kinds of places. And trees, tree worship type things, or I don't know if you'd want to call it worship. Let's just go on. The respect of trees. Furthermore, Discovery News has reported that the recent study suggests that at least some of the geoglyphs were related to an astronomical interest by the ancient inhabitants. Specifically, they have found importance in one group of designs in the Azraq Oasis. You'll see these listed as the Azraq Oasis ones, but there's a cluster around the Azraq Oasis where they've done them. But then again, that's like 7 out of thousands. The majority of these spokes of these wheels in that cluster are oriented for some reason to stretch in a southeast to northwest direction. It's where the sun rises during the winter solstice, and so there's that connection. This may need no more than an educated hunch. However, as the other geoglyphs in the area do not show apparent archaeoastronomical information. Well, it's like some do, some don't. I think we'll probably find that at Göbekli Tepe also, whenever we get totally excavated out of it, they'll probably find that even though there were little temple setups and groupings there, that some of these other buildings wouldn't necessarily look like it's for that. One that we've already found that is in one of those clusters is one that they call the birthing circle or something, because it looks like it had to do that. And although that may still have a connotation towards rebirth, and it may not even really have to do with that at all, you could see how somebody's rebirth ceremony might have something to do with the birth ceremony in the first place. The two wheels and the cluster make up just a small section of the famous works of old men that cross the Arabia region, from Syria across Jordan and Saudi Arabia to Yemen, according to the researchers from that current study. The geoglyphs of the Middle East were first spotted in 1927 by RAF Flight Lieutenant Percy Maitland while he was flying an airmail route over Jordan. The shapes of the designs vary, and as it was written by Ancient Origins in 2014, whenever they put out an article there, some of these wheel-shaped structures are clustered closer together, while others appear to be solitary. Some structures have more of a rectangle shape, while many of them are round. Some of the circular structures contain two spokes from a bar, and the wheels are sometimes found on the top of what we call kites. Hopefully this picture will show up here fairly decent. And what you'll see here in the very bottom left-hand corner is some grid work that's showing up, but omitting that, you see a pattern here that looks like maybe a torn out postage stamp, and you can tell that around the edges of it, it has an effect where it goes whoop, 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 whoop around these walls, and at each one, they seem to have a little tower at each setup there. So this would have been like a little fort back in the day. And you can also see that there's that swirly cluster that's trapped inside the bigger fort that's here. But also they make note that right here coming off of it, this is that kite type of thing. And here's the kite flying and the idea. But that they would try to run animals and get them caught in the ravine that leads into this. And then they would chase them down here, perhaps people coming up from the sides on either way, and they would run into this area, and then there's just a slaughter pen in a room where they could probably keep them. And if they could get enough of them, they could take a few of the ones that were left and try to keep them alive and domesticate them and feed them until the point that they needed to use them for food and such. As they describe here, there's thousands of them across, again, from Syria, or what we call Syria today, all the way through Jordan, the Black Desert, and into Yemen, but it goes much farther than that. We're about to show you some more of these. Thousands. The purpose of geoglyphs probably varied according to their location and design. Gary Rolfson, co-director of the East Badia Archaeological Project, says that the presence of cairns suggests that some association are with burials, since that is often the way of treating people once they died. However, he was also quick to add that there are other wheels there and cairns that are entirely lacking, pointing to a different possible use. So it wasn't just one purpose, and they're all just one purpose, and there's clusters of them set together, and this shows you a sign of civilization somewhat, where people are putting these things together. And the only remnant we have now is something that was set up like this, whether it was for farming or the community, or some of them were for sacred burials, or perhaps shamans or tribal elders and things like that. Regarding to the construction of the geoglyphs, it's evident that the quality also differs from one structure to the next. Speaking of the two wheels in the Black Desert, Rolfson said that they are simple in form and not very rigidly made according to the geometric standards. They contrast sharply with some other wheels that appear to have been set out with almost as much attention to detail as the Nazca lines. The precision of other wheels may have been due to the use of a long rope and a stake. Like people talk about how they, fake the crop circles, and they're using a circle and exactly amounts of string, and they can work this out on a computer and draw it out, and then they can go out and literally, due to the lengths of string and going around in circles and doing things, make that crop circle. And that some of this is shown to that precision, others aren't. A little later I'll show you some of that precision that they show. We'll get into it. And what the hell that is they keep showing there. Portable AC. The information on the 2 wheels of the Black Desert should be forthcoming, as Rolfson told the Jordan Times that he plans on returning to Wadi el-Katifi in 2016, then back to Wasad in 2017 and 2019. I guess we're just waiting for some more information on that. But that other group that I'm talking about, somebody needs to look at too, but I think the reason that they don't want to is the fact that they understand where these come from, and therefore the other ones also. In contrast to the designs are located further north, David Kennedy, co-director of the Aerial Photographic Archive for Archaeology in the Middle East, or APAMI, has said that the forms in Saudi Arabia and Yemen tend to be small and only have 1 or 2 bars instead of spokes. Some of the wheels are actually shaped like squares, rectangles, or triangles, and the APAMI have also noticed kites in the interconnecting walls of stones, which he has dubbed as gates, like they would let things in like a gate. So again, we'll see something here. It's going to try to lock up on me again. Yep, sure enough. I knew it when I tried to pull it down just a hair, and it said, no, I can't move anymore. I don't understand. It keeps doing that on this channel. It's because they're trying to reload the next little ad that goes in the corner over there that I'm not watching. And if you don't watch their ad, boy, they really make the whole thing reload. I wonder if it happens on PC, because that would be terribly disgusting and make people not really want to deal with it if it keeps doing this type of thing. Here in this picture you can see that there's this deep trench, grab my pen here, deep trench that's run through here, and it runs up in this area too, and it looks like that'd be a great killing spot, because people would sit up on the edges there and they'd run things into this ridge and try to take them out. But if you look here, there's a triangle here and then a line that almost looks dotted, like dot 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 dot, triangle up in here, dot 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 dot, triangle down here, dot 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 dot, and then this circle, or I'm sorry, triangle down here, and then this circle that's right here, and you can see this connective that's running here. Perhaps that's something entirely different, or substantial, or something that should be looked at. APAMI are currently unable to conduct on the site or aerial image searching of the wheels in Saudi Arabia and Yemen. Thus, they are studying aerial images from the 20th century and free satellite imaging from Google Earth and Bing for now. In fact, you can find a lot of these things on Google Earth and satellite pictures and photographs. There's been so many thousands of archaeological sites actually found in that way. It's getting to be a new way to kind of search for that. Well, here's these Natufians. I've got one on here, but let's just look hear what researchers say about another area. See if we can get into it. No, it's going to lock up. That's funny. After that short of a time. Let me just quit out of it here. Oh, it's not even reloading quick. Wow. Bear with me, guys. Here comes the second part of the reveal and why they really haven't gotten into this thing, even though they've known it for nearly 100 years and only had a few little small peeks into it. There's the picture we were just at, so it locked on that. And we're just going to go to this page. So here's another ad that's come out, and it says, what research? Gosh, guys. It says, what research and scientists found in South Africa could rewrite human history. We, our forefathers and our forefathers before, have been told that Sumer, which is located in southern Mesopotamia, currently known as Iraq, is the site of the first known civilization on Earth. According to history books, it came to light approximately 6,000 years ago. Well, I hope that people are even getting that information in history books, although it was well known whenever I was a kid they wouldn't talk about it, and they act like Egypt was the first thing that came about, still pretty much. Sumer only, I believe, got 2 paragraphs worth of mentioning to it, that they had helped writing and agriculture and a fertile crescent, and they didn't want to call it Eden or do anything or make any connections about it. Even at that time, they were all about it. But they're saying this now, but of course we know all about Catalhoyuk and leading back all the way through to Göbekli Tepe, so we can't make that connection that they're even trying to do to this day. But a giant stone city, which is almost buried under the sand in an area 150 kilometers west of the port Maputo of Mozambique in South Africa, has been unearthed. Based on the calculations made using the dolerite erosion rate, it's probably between 1,660,000 and 200,000 years old. This makes it by far older than the Sumerian civilization. Oh, well, that's just a joke to try to compare 6 and 160,000. It really is. Also, to call this a civilization we're fixing to look at might be a joke or might not, but that's left up to people to make discerns of. For what we're looking at here all of a sudden are these same crop circles built in the same type of way with the same stone type work. Now, are any of them exactly the same? No. None of them from Yemen, from Syria all the way to Yemen, and across that whole Black Desert are actually carbon copies of each other in any way. And of course, there isn't a carbon copy of any of those here or here, there. Let's get that straight. There's nothing here that's exacting. In fact, that's the thing, is that they're all unique. Like if each person was to try to build an individual house, hopefully they wouldn't all look the same. Although if everybody started liking the way this guy built his house, everybody'd start mocking that for him, but then they'd still look a little bit different. You can see these clearly from above, like a geoglyph. And some of them have been shown to trap water around them and around the stones enough to where more vegetation grows there, trees prop up and so on, and a lot of them are hidden because of things like that. You look at a picture like this, and I believe this is Michael Tellinger. He's a guy from South Africa, Cape South African, who helped find these things and got so interested in them, started coming out here. Of course, he's got a bunch of ideas, and 160 to 200,000 years ago and so on. But if we see this form, it would be hard for anybody to believe that for 200,000 years, people still made the same type of architecture, although it may date back to that point. Then again, if we look at those ones that were 6,500 BC, they might actually date back to a much, much later point. I don't know if erosion scientists have got a hold of that. But the odd thing here is the site's believed to be a portion of an even larger structure. It's approximately 10,000 kilometers square. Well, bigger than that is the area between Yemen, the Black Desert, and all the way up into Syria that expands. But here's an area that clusters up that's down in the Cape and southeastern Africa, if you will, and spreading across the middle of it in the southern Cape region. It shows a lot of these. And there's places where there's 2 walls, so something could walk in between them or be run into it, like animals and so on, in all these clusters. Here we're seeing some kites around all these circles, and these circles aren't just like the ones we were just looking at, in a different situation. It's also assumed that this ancient city, if you want to call it that, was highly advanced due to the organized structure of the community, the terraced agriculture, and the roads that were made to connect the said structures. There were several gold mines found in the area, ancient gold mines somebody had done, which suggests that the people who inhabited the lost city practiced gold mining. Local residents have encountered these magnificent stone circles countless of times before, and now you look at this and we get this weird idea of kind of like whenever the rainforests get pulled back and we're starting to find so much more South American artifacts. Look at something like this, and trapped in this little jungle of trees, we can see symmetry and circles and stuff going on this escarpment that falls off to the left. But no, there's clusters in the far distance up there to the right, up to the left, over, and if you go on Google Maps, you can find quite a bit of these places. And even a long road, a stretch that goes for many, many miles, straight lines that go for many, many miles, pointing apparently to a bluff in the distance that you couldn't even see at the start of the line. Look at this terracing work that goes on here. Now, none of this could, of course, be correlated to any of the Khoisan or anybody that was here during this time. And then if we look back and we're saying 160,000 years ago, well, scientists have figured out that Homo erectus lived on, or the form of African Homo erectus that we know of, lived on until a much, much more recent time. But also we know that Homo erectus didn't have any of these type of skills going on to create any of this. And if you want to correlate it to a people, there's an exact replica of it pretty much. If you just go north up into Yemen, well, you have to cross the Red Sea to do that, or if you go north straight up through Egypt. And one probably thinks, along with, Adam's calendar down here, which is a rock circle, along with the rock circle that's up in Egypt, or close to it, in Natuffian, in connections, we can see that there were people that used to make stone circles that are just like that, even at that time, and they have a far reach to themselves, and I think we've just realized they have a much farther reach than people give credit for. God, I can't get that out. Here's Tellinger himself, and he's looking around at these, and of course you can see the stones stacked up and how they're kind of destroyed now a bit, but the locals don't seem to want to utilize them for anything. Based on the evidence they obtained, Tellinger said that the photographs and artifacts or evidence that we accumulated points towards a lost civilization that has never before been and precedes all others, not for a few hundred years or a few thousand, but many thousands of years. Well, if it dates back to that 160,000 years, but if it does, then what we're looking at is either Homo erectus building something which makes no sense and won't correlate to anything, or, since we know Homo sapiens now is not 200,000 years, but 315,000 years, due to the archaeological find in Jebel Irhoud just a year and a half ago, or about 2 now, goes back to 315,000 years, it's entirely possible that Homo sapiens, as being a somewhat modern human, would be involved with it. Whenever I find the stretch of the dating going from 6500 BC to 160,000, it seems to be that maybe there's some exaggerations being made by some people, and also maybe that 6,500 year dating is not finding the earliest charcoal, but just a piece of charcoal that was in there, and it could be the last piece of charcoal, which would be what you'd find in a hearth, not the earliest. Carved on the rocks are the ruins are images of an Egyptian Ankh, which was why Tellinger assumed that this African metropolis may be the oldest structure built by humans, and that the Sumerians and Egyptians probably inherited their knowledge from this civilization. Well, that'd be a strange thing if you said, well, they had an Ankh thing from way, way, way back when, if you want to say 160,000 years ago, and that got kept all the way through. Yeah, and he says that he thinks, of course, Sumerians and stuff got their information from these, and I think that black people would like to interject them into this situation, but of course, the modern form of black people, as we know it, of Negroids, really don't show up. And the archaeological record even is proto-formed to about 9100 BC, and then again it's a proto-form that, if you look into the archaeology, looks much more like the Homo erectus all the way back from 160,000 years ago that still was extant in Africa, and only the recent form that we find is earliest remains are Astellar man at 4,400 BC, leaving them out of the equation pretty much entirely. But even later, they never did do any great stoneworks or anything like that. The Khoisan are not shown to have done anything like this. The Pygmies, of course, not. The Nilotics and so on, they have no connectives. But What does have a direct connective, looks exactly like it, same building structures and everything, is this place in Yemen that I just showed you earlier. So it's something quite telling that the range of these Natufian people went pretty far. So after all this, it's quite impossible for the image of those gods to appear thousands of years before the Egyptian civilization supposedly emerged. The first sphinx, a carving of Horus the bird, and an accurate stone calendar known as Adam's calendar can be seen in these ruins. Well, I guess flip-flopping on the situation, we do know that a lot of the people that were living out in Africa whenever the Sahara was green ended up correlating into becoming part of what ended up being the founders of ancient Egypt. But then, of course, also those Natufian culture that we know of came from the north around the Mediterranean and through, apparently went all the way through and didn't just stop at Egypt or anything. One would think that a lot of these ruins were around Egypt at one time too, but of course all those stones got used up to make new things long ago because there were people around. And the only reason these never got used at all was because there were never any people around that utilized any type of stonework that ever saw these after this point, or created any type of civilization out of it, or utilized it to create any more buildings or anything of that nature, and left it with this. Here we're seeing a depiction they say is a primeval Horus. Well, it's a bird. I don't think we could even call it a raven or a vulture or anything whatsoever. You know, almost a penguin, if you will. You could go with anything off of it, but it does have that bird caricature into it, along with other stones that surround it. And here's Adam's calendar, and of course in this article they want to list it as a 75,000-year-old circular monolith stone calendar, and it might date to that time, and it might redate humanity, and we find out that a lot of these things go back a lot older than they've ever wanted to accredit. You see, because when they started doing this and accrediting, they were trying to give everything a biblical timeline and shatter anything that didn't show that. And so something that would point out to something like that, they'd just go, oh, that's a wrong dating, and throw it away. And how many of those were thrown away that in a modern day we'd look back at it and go, really? Let me see that. Because we're no longer under preconceived notions. We've had far too many, well, we've had too much water under the bridge now, and then that's added up to quite a bit of knowledge about things. Stone man. Here we're seeing one of these stones that are standing here, and it's got a pyramid built on it. It even looks like it has individual brick lines done in it. It's got some patina and some lichen growing on it, although it looks fairly modern. It doesn't look the same color as the background stone is, so it couldn't be that old. It does have an old amount to it because that takes a lot longer than people would think to make all that lichen grow in on it around the edges that's there. These discoveries are so staggering that they will not be easily digested by the mainstream historical and archaeological fraternity, as we have already experienced. It will require a complete paradigm shift in how we view our human history, Tellinger said. The results of Tellinger and Hines' research inspired the former to write a book about the temples of the African gods. Let's not get confused here. When we say African, we mean in the country of Africa. We're not talking about black people. Quite often in literature, if they find the word African, they try to correlate themselves to it. It doesn't mean that. It means it happened on the continent of Africa. That continent was named by white people and some endemic people that had been there all across North Africa, through the Horn of Africa since primordial times. And looking at it here, it shows you something else. Then again, there is the Blombos Cave down in the Cape that showed a red ochre site and everything that looks just like red ochre sites we found all up north, and that's quite telling. Yeah, there's a few sites that are around in that area and more down in the Cape that they have found even dating back to 40,000 years that also have correlations. And the skeleton found there, they say, doesn't look anything at all like the natives, trying to be very vague. Well, when you look into it, what do they look like? Well, it's more of a Cro-Magnonish type Caucasoid person. That far down. Well, yeah, look at all these rings. Well, how can you say those are for them? Well, look at all these other rings that we started off the video with. Look at the lack of any rings that these people have now or even doing anything with. So that's just not going to correlate really well. Further studies may be required to learn more about this lost civilization. More questions may emerge as other researchers dig deeper to find answers. Could this lost African metropolis have been the first civilization on Earth? Should our history be rewritten now, and what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. I invite you to do so. Let me know what you think about this, finding these stone circles that apparently mock these ones that are all up there. It's quite revealing on the connections you can find there. You can go to just African rock circles and see a lot of pictures of these. Let's see if it'll even let me go. It's not going to let me go. Amazing. But in that fact, you can see that there's a lot of them that totally correlate. And while somebody looking at that data will probably turn around and see if they can find any way out of connecting these two sites, it's really the only connection that is seen. It's kind of strange, and myself, since this has been around for so long and people have known about it, the reason that they're not going into it and finding out what's really connected to it is because it's actually connected to those Caucasians again, and that would kind of shatter some people's beliefs further. Well, they want to believe that all Africa was always black people, but of course it never was. So there's a lot of these stone circles that can be seen here, and a lot of these are worked stone. This is ancient limestone. There's your other circles, not associated with what we were just looking at, but they're stone circles, but they've been cut and quarried and squared. In fact, the erosion that's done onto them is making them rounded off more. When we look at old limestone, we can tell that these were actually at one time quite squared off. Also shows a connective. Regardless of the people that are standing around there now, there hasn't been any of those people actually make one of these stones in recorded history that we know of. But there's a lot of other people that did a lot of advanced Neolithic stonework that we're very familiar with, and this circle looks remarkably like those circles we were looking at the very first of the video. Not in black and white, but so we have it there. There's a lot of these circles though, and they want to show you this one that's right here, Gippo in Liberia, circles of Gambia and so on. But these ancient stone circles are attached to a people that are not really the people that are currently living in the area. You can see how tall they go in some of these places and how they're built all out of slate pieces. And then people want to connect this to the Anunnaki or the Anunnaki and say that this is when they were building, talked about them doing this gold. And we know there is gold in this area. They talk about those mines and stuff, so there might be some type of connection to it. He's made a lot of videos like this one right here, the stone circles in Africa. They're well known. Here's a more modern thing that's been made by people, but there's a lot of these stone circles which have calendar effects to them, and that calendar effect isn't going to be attached to a people who even to this day don't really have an accurate calendar. You find these other circles like this, some of them have little dots going around the outside of them. We don't see that necessarily on the others. Yeah, well, we find this over here and don't find that over there. Does that mean they're not connected? No, not in any way. But other people have looked at it and they go, well, even though this one that they found looks a little warbled, what it really is two circles inside a circle with an overlapping circle, and then there's these three circles that are here. Now what's strange about them, even though they are a little warbled, if you were to stand in the center of them and give the effect which they show here, it actually peels out to be a squared off triangle, and these people are using sacred geometry to have made these things. There's the picture that we started the thing with. So here are the connections here. There are people even on African stone circles, and they go, yeah, these are these same things. And this is probably the reason that they don't want to make the connections and they don't want to go archaeologically into it, because it would be embarrassing for one people and ruin and shatter the whole dichotomy of the idea that they have. Look at this place and how terraced it is and all of these things that are done into it. Strangely, they're finding these Celtic swirls that are all around, and they tell you rock art across Africa is dying, it's going away. It's slowly but surely eroding away. Stone circles that are going there, and people need to look into this because they've made all these different connections in ancient African architecture and so on, and sacred geometry, and it's in Africa, but it doesn't have anything to do with what you try to call Africans today, because most of the white people are not really there anymore, or Caucasians are not there anymore. But pretty interesting there. You can see this looks exactly like that, but that wall that's right there in the middle that's so tall, that's much taller than a human can reach up to the top of, and the outside wall that's on it. Let me know what y'all think down there in the comments. I'll see if I can find some other connections that are there. Hey, here's one. Here's a couple of T-pillars that are in this thing here. They're real small though, but that's not what? Huh? What is all this stuff? We should probably get down there and do some checking, don't you think? Probably at both places simultaneously with maybe a similar team that's hooked up together with their information so they can correlate the data, or discorrelate it if there's any possibilities. I think looking through these, you can tell this is pretty much the same thing going on. Is there variation on a theme? Yeah, there's a little more spokishness going on in these people than down here, but you can still find it down here. Just like you'd find the circle, circle, and you can find the circle, circle. Yeah. So it all hooks up. Here's one where somebody's made the total connective of a Jewish star in the center of a circle in the center of a circle. Yeah. They're connectives here too. You know, one thing on the way leading out here, there's one thought that these people had, that something like a big kick drum that a drummer in a band would have, where it's not really deep but it's big around, they had stretch across a skin extremely tight to it, and there's a tube attached to it. Now it's kind of rudimentary and it looked kind of, what the hell is this? Oh, it must have been a drum, it must have been that. Or the original thought too was that it was a billows type of thing, and then the tube was to be blowing out the air. It would sit and respirate and puff out like that. Other people now have looked at it and said, no, if they stretched that real tight and sprinkled some sand across it, and then somebody made a noise down that tube, it would vibrate it, and it would cause sound patterns to make different waves around on these skins. And what's weird is a lot of these patterns that are showing up here are patterns that will show up whenever you make a certain sound frequency. Even Tellinger himself showed that a lot of these hornfels stones that are associated with this, they actually ring. You can pick them up, hold them in your hand, and ting, they ring like a bell. Here again we see a sacred geometry, much like Göbekli Tepe, with a super triangle opposed around on double circles that are done. Yeah. Wheels inside wheels and so on. Starts making you think of tales of brave Atlantis and so on. But other ones here, they show winter solstice, Orion's belt setting vertically, summer solstice. All these things are connected to it with Adam's calendar and these other connections, which seem to connect to a people that used to be pretty damn good at